So last Sunday, first of all, I want to thank you thank you for coming out last Tuesday for the Penitential service. We had a record attendance. Those of you who were here, you probably were surprised. We had 8 priests and we're still hearing confessions past 1 hour. That's a lot. And I want to thank you. And I think for most people, it came as a result of our reflection last Sunday when we talked about the need for you to forgive yourself. And I want to thank you for taking that bold step last Sunday, committing to forgive yourself. And I saw that in the attendance, the number of people that came out for penitential service. Now that's ongoing. It's not one commitment you make one day and that's it. Remember, the goal is to get yourself out of that place of shame, because that's not where God wants you to be. He doesn't want you to be in a place of shame. So it's a battle you have to fight every day. But it starts with a commitment. So thank you for making the commitment last week. And I just hope that by God's grace, we'll take this commitment seriously so that we will see ourselves the way God sees us. And how does God see us? Created in His image, named, called, and loved by Him. Like I did last week, I want to start this weekend by my homily with asking a question. Why is it difficult to forgive someone who hurts you? Someone who loves you or someone you loved betrayed you. Why is it so difficult to forgive? Any hand? Why? And don't tell me it's because you're a bad person, but actually, no, you're not.
I sometimes look at it as a sign of weakness.
Is it a sign of weakness?
Sometimes I look at it that way. It's hard to forgive somebody. I think it's my own inside that I feel weak if I forgive.
You feel weak when you forgive. Thank you. Thanks, Kevin. Anyone else? You feel weak when you forgive. Unforgiveness, you feel the strength, right? Sometimes that's what we think. Anyone else? Why is it hard to forgive someone? Even though God says forgive. And every time you promise God in Our Father, forgive me, Lord, as I forgive others, and yet you don't do it. Why is it difficult? We saw why it was difficult last week to forgive self. Okay, Jonah. You think they didn't do something wrong, or you think it's okay what they did? Poor guy. Yeah. Oh, and mom is not close by to help you with this. Okay, Isaiah, why is it difficult to forgive? I've got smart altar servers. You can see that. Smarter than the priest. Yeah. You might be wrong as well? Yeah. Okay, thanks, Isaiah. Why is it difficult to forgive when someone actually wronged you? Even when you try. What makes it hard? You're afraid they'll hurt you again? You're trying to protect yourself? Self-preservation? Yes. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, Gerard. I knew that word pride was going to come up. And I see a lot of nodding heads here, so I tend to agree with you. Thank you. Our pride gets in the way sometimes. What else? Any other reason? Have you thought about it? Sorry? Because they're not sorry. Okay. That's a big one. Because sometimes they're not sorry. Right? Sometimes they don't accept that they offended you. Yes. Yeah.
I think sometimes it's to protect ourselves, because sometimes when the person responds in the way we know to be like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm going to play nice next time, it's much easier to forgive someone when they recognize. But when there's no recognition and there's continuous patterns of hurt, it's hard, because you know it's going to happen again probably very soon.
Okay. Yeah, and that's a very valid point. But I want to quickly, before I come to you, I want to quickly note the difference. There's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Okay, I'm not talking about reconciliation here, because forgiveness is one step, and then after forgiving the person, you can choose to reconcile with the person. You can forgive someone without reconciling with them. And what I mean is without letting them back into your life. And it happens, and it's okay. Because some people, they are very toxic. They're just very toxic. You don't need them in your life. But you don't need to carry the wound that comes from the wound they inflicted on you. So that's the difference. There's a difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. Okay? And we'll talk about it in the next few minutes. Yes?
Just the fear that you open yourself up to, like if you say it's okay, I forgive you. It's like you're saying it's okay that you were wronged in some way, and it's like a fear that it might happen again, or instead of coming from a place of love, saying like I love you and it's all right. It's the fear that you're saying it's okay to hurt me.
Yeah, and it's never okay. Let's get this right. A hurt is a hurt. It's never okay. No, it's not okay that they did it. And if you see me staggering a little bit this morning, it's because I'm taking some very strong medication and it's making me a little bit wobbly. And I'm seeing you too that way. I had some procedures done in my mouth, so I have a few stitches in my mouth. And I tell you, even opening my mouth this morning is very painful. So I'm taking these very strong painkillers that feels like I'm not taking anything. But it's making me a little bit wobbly here and there. So if you watch me, I'm not drunk. It's just from medication, right? Yeah, so it's not okay. Let's get that right. That hurt is not okay. And you should never normalize it, because that itself, that's a problem. So it's not okay. Something is funny there. I wonder what it is. Okay. You know, last week, when we talked about how hard it is to forgive self, and we started talking about what makes it difficult, if you remember, and we said it's because there is something that God put into you, which is a natural emotion, and we talked about what that thing is called. We called it guilt, if you remember. And we said guilt is natural. And we looked at it last week, why God put guilt in you, so that you have the ability to review your action. And if it is wrong, guilt helps you not to do it again. But we also saw how when guilt is not moderated, it turns into shame, right? And we said God doesn't give us shame. He uses guilt to help us to identify those times that we've crossed the line. We've gone against our own moral compass. Today, this morning too, I want to talk about one other thing that God puts in you, that when it is not properly used, it makes it difficult to forgive. And what is that? I'm going to go a little bit of biology this morning and psychology. So when God created you, He put into you so many processes, systems that works inside you. Last week we saw one system called guilt. Today we're going to look at another system called the central nervous system. Now, what does the central nervous system do? Its primary job is it acts as an internal surveillance. So it scans all around your environment, trying to keep you safe. And if it identifies any situation or anybody that is a danger to you, it sends message to your brain to tell you that this environment or this person is dangerous. Now, God put that system in you so that you have red flags, so that your instincts can tell you when you walk into a place that is not safe. Now, how does your central nervous system work? It works in two ways. In the central nervous system, there are two systems there. One is called the sympathetic system, and the other one is called a parasympathetic system. Now, what does the sympathetic system do? The sympathetic system works in your body when you walk into a place of danger, and it sends a message to your brain that tells you there is danger here, there is danger, and forces you to react in one of these three ways. Either you flee, or you fight back, or you freeze. One of the three. Now you do that because there's a message sent to your brain from your central processing system, the nervous system, saying there is a danger. So if you were in a relationship with somebody and they betrayed you, or said something very hurtful, or they gossiped about you behind your back, or you shared something very personal with them and you heard it somewhere, something they shouldn't share, and you're really hurt. As soon as that person, you come into contact with that person, a message is sent from your sympathetic processing system saying, this person cannot be trusted. So your natural reaction is either to flee from them, avoid them. If they come to this church, you don't come to this church, you go to another parish. Or you fight back when you see them, or you actually freeze. Now I'm sure you've been in such situations, and I've been in such situations several times, where I actually ran into someone I wasn't expecting, and I haven't processed my negative emotions with them, and I practically cannot move. Now, because God knows that that system He put it in you to help you, to guide you, to protect you from danger. But He also knows that human beings need to be moderated. So what did God do? He produced another system called the parasympathetic to help to moderate the action of the sympathetic processing system. What does the parasympathetic system do? When you get into that mode of fight, flight, or freeze, and it's getting too much, your brain can apply the parasympathetic processing system that acts as a brake. You know, when you're driving your car and you see danger, you apply your brakes. What does it do? It slows you down and brings you to a halt. So the parasympathetic system helps to moderate the emotions, because the sympathetic system comes with so much emotions. And if those emotions are too much in you, they can get you to a place where you start getting feelings like panic attacks, and that's dangerous. So in order not to get into that, every time you see someone that hurts you, you have the ability in you, God created another system in you to help you to moderate that, so that you start seeing, you get to a point where that heightened, heartbeat that you are having, once you start applying the parasympathetic system, the thought of, okay, it's okay here, it's okay, I'm safe, you start seeing your heartbeat lowered, and after a particular time, you feel relaxed. Now, the danger is we often get used to using the sympathetic system that we forget how to apply the parasympathetic system. And so what happens in a situation when you find someone who doesn't use both is they get to a point where in psychology we call you're hyperventilated. So you're constantly, your antennas are wide, working 24/7, never resting. And that's the time when you say the person has gotten to a point of a heightened anxiety, or they see dangers in everywhere, in every water, in every air, and they're constantly watching over their backs. That is because the parasympathetic system is not being applied in their lives. And so, in other words, you become a victim of your own emotions. And you are caged and trapped in these very negative emotions. This morning, I want to talk to you about how the need for you to free yourself from these negative emotions. Because God never meant you to be there. Just like how God never meant you to be in a place of shame. He never meant you to be in a place where you are hyperventilated, or your anxiety is so high that it's getting to a place of panic attack. Now let's talk about the things that we should be doing, or the things that causes us to remain in a place where forgiveness becomes very difficult. The first thing I want to share this morning regarding that is something that is very interesting but very funny. Fairy tales. Growing up as kids, as little ones, there were lots of fairy tales that mom and dad would tell us. Now we grow up, we know that those things were fairy tales, they're not true. One of them is that if you lose your tooth, what happens? The tooth fairy comes in the middle of the night and puts money under your pillow, and you wake up in the morning and you get 5 cents because you lost your tooth. Now we know that's mom that made that up, right? But there's another kind of fairy tale that we saw growing up and we did not outgrow, and it's still in us, and we're not aware of it. What is it? Our first exposure as human beings to true love and relationship is the relationship between mom and dad. And for many of you who are older, from my age and older, you would know that when you were growing up, we never saw our parents quarrel or fight. Did we? Unless if we had a dad who had problems with drinking. We grew up seeing our parents always holding hands and sometimes kissing, and it looked like their marriage was the best. Growing up, when mom and dad when they want to quarrel or fight, what will they do? They wait till all the kids have gone to bed, or they shut the door. And so in our minds, we are forming a picture of what a relationship is. And we're getting to our adolescent years. Our fairy tale imagination of every relationship is like mom and dad's relationship. It is perfect. There is no betrayal. There is no denial. There are no fights. There are no conflicts. And so we grew up that way. We start making friends in our early teens or even in elementary school with that image of what friendship is going to be. We are quick to make friends. We are good at making friends. And then suddenly, in our preteens, something is introduced into our relationship. The one friend that we trusted so well said something about us or did something wrong to us. And suddenly we don't know how to fix it. Why? Because mom and dad had never at any time when we were growing up, never sat us down to say, hey, Kevin, this is what it would take for you to start a relationship. But guess what, Kevin? No matter how good that relationship is, there's going to come a time when Chantel is going to disappoint you. And when Chantel does that, Kevin, this is what you do to resolve that conflict. We were never taught that. So that's why I call it the fairy tale story. And so when we're exposed to the first conflict in a relationship, what do? Remember the message from the sympathetic processing system. We either flee, we fight, or we freeze. We don't know how to resolve conflicts. And so the most common thing we do nowadays is we cut them off. Cut them off. Cancel culture. Cut them off. Yes, just cut them off. That's easier to do. But what is the problem with cutting them off? If that's just so easy, I just cut them out of my life and that's it. I don't have to see them anymore. That's okay. What is wrong with that? Now, this is what is wrong with it. When you enter into a relationship with somebody, you're sharing part of your life with that person, no matter what kind of relationship it is, whether it's work relationship, whatever kind of relationship, there's a part of you that you are sharing with that person. There's a bonding that happens. So when that relationship is severed, guess what? There is a grieving that goes with it. Now, naturally, your brain understands when it grieves someone who has died, because that's what grieving is. The person has died. And so you don't get to see the person. In a relationship, when you're grieving the loss of a relationship, your brain is telling you, one part of your brain says, that person has died. And then suddenly you come to church and you see the person. And your brain is wondering, no, your brain is not used to this. When you're grieving, the person is dead. But you see the person, your sight, your eyes, you can see the person, and your brain is saying they are dead. So there's mixed messaging. You're confused. What do you do here? This person is supposed to be dead. And you're struggling with that. And why is that struggle happening? Because instead of learning to resolve the crisis, you feel too ashamed and embarrassed to learn how to resolve conflicts, and you think the shortcut to it is to cut people off, forgetting that those people are still alive, and you're going to run into them. You might choose not to go to Costco, or you go to the Costco on the south end, and maybe just that day you went to the south end Costco, That same day, they went to that same Costco. What are you going to do? You think this country is so big? And then you run into them in the train station, in the bus station, or the airport. What are you going to do? Because your brain tells you they are dead, and now they are alive. How do we fix that problem? Remember the two processing system. It's because one system is overworked, and this other system has not kicked in. And it hasn't kicked in because we have not learned from watching our parents how to resolve conflicts. And someone mentioned this, and I'm just going to come to that. So we cut them off, but in all reality, what's happening is we now are taking a heavy backpack that has a rock in it, and we're carrying this backpack on our shoulders every day. And it's hurting us like anything. When you carry excess load on your back, you're not meant to carry it for so long, it's going to wear you out. And it's wearing you out. But you're too proud to learn how to do this. And you keep carrying it. And even when you hear the message over and over, God says forgive, you're so used to carrying this rock that you don't know what you're going to do with yourself because you don't know what to do with the rock. And then what makes carrying the rock very, very tempting is the message you get. Your voice tells you, and someone said it here. You know, when you're carrying that rock, you cut people off. You know what your mind tells you? It tells you that you're showing strength. When you cut people off, you're actually showing strength because you're not allowing them to walk all over you. But tell me, let's be honest, can someone who is showing strength be struggling emotionally? No. Obviously, you're not showing strength. That's not the truth. Your brain is telling you lies to make excuse for cutting people off because your brain is too proud to want to learn or go do the hard work of resolving the conflict. So you rather carry this heavy backpack. What is God telling you? He said He's come to set you free. And anything that you carry that is not given to you by Him, you're not meant to carry it because it adds stress onto you. I want to share my own life story here, and I'm sure I've mentioned this before. You've heard over and over several times I've made reference to my relationship with my dad and how he never wanted my mom to have me and wanted an abortion, and my mom would not have one. So my mom had to leave the marriage in order to have me, and after she had me, she left me with my grandmom because I was not wanted, and then went back to her marriage. Well, in the later part of my dad's life, before he died, he started writing me letters, and he wanted to make up. I was too mad. Just didn't want him. I just didn't want him in my life. It was too toxic for me. I was not ready. I didn't even want to think of it. I used to dread running into my uncles because they say things that freezes me. Things like, oh, you so look like your dad. I hear words like that, I can't function the whole day. Just the thought of looking like him ran me really crazy. I was in the last year of my training in the seminary, so this was the 8th year. I was already a deacon. I was 4 months to becoming a priest. I went to the dentist this day because I was having problem with one of my wisdom teeth, and they said they had to pull it out. And the dentist did the worst dental work you can ever think of. Of course, it's the third world, right? First of all, in the middle of it, all the freezing they were supposed to do did not freeze anymore. And then the guy did not have enough instruments, and so he was cracking the tooth, and pieces were falling all over the place, and I was in the severe pain. Gosh. And I was wondering, well, and it was supposed to be, I think, 30 minutes procedure. It took him almost 3 hours. I was sitting there. So I finally finished this procedure, and I could not even feel my head, my entire head. And I finally made it back to the seminary. And when I got there, this friend of mine came to me and he said, the rector would like to see you in his office. Well, that's not good news. In the seminary and the rector wants to see you in his office, it's one of these things. Either you are under suspension, so you're going to have to do some manual work, or you are sent home. And I was wondering, I've put in 8 years into this thing. You're not going to send me home at this time. And what have I done? So I got to his office and he said, sit. And I sat. He said, I have bad news for you. Oh. And of course, the immediate reaction is, I'm going to be sent home. And I said, okay. And he said, I just want to let you know that we got news that your father passed on. He looked at my face. There was no expression. And he said, did you hear me? I said, I heard you. Your father passed on. Oh, yeah. That's okay. Huh. And he looked at me. And his next question was, would you like permission to go for his burial, his funeral? I didn't have to think. No. So he said, what's the problem? What's happening here? And I broke down. And I told him a story about me and my dad. And he did his best to say what he was going to say, but I wasn't listening because I was not ready to let go of that rock. I'd rather carry that rock than deal with the problem. But guess what? It took me 1 year, and this is public confession, 1 year and exactly 1 year, 6 months before I could go to my father's graveside. I couldn't. And even when I went, I didn't know I was going to go. I was tricked into it. So I had a brother who was a priest, the first son, the first child in my family, a priest, and I'm the last, a priest. But he's gone, he's long gone now, he's with the Lord, hopefully. I hope he is. So I went to visit him, and he was in a country parish. And then one day he said, get into the car, let's go for a drink. Who says no to that? The senior brother says, go for a free drink? Oh yeah, sure. So I got into the car. And we're driving, and this guy was leaving the town. And I said to him, hey, brother, where are you going to? Is there a bar around here? He says, well, you should listen to your older brother. Why do you question me? I said, okay. So I kept quiet. And he kept driving on this road, and I wonder where he was going. And then suddenly I looked ahead, and I saw the gate leading to a cemetery. I got the message. And I turned to him, I said, you're not doing this to me. You're not doing this to me. And I started crying. And he said, that's exactly what I'm doing. And he drove through the gate, went straight to, and I saw the tombstone, the headstone, with my dad's name on it. I just broke down again. I started crying. I sat in that car, I think for 20 minutes I couldn't get out because I was frozen. And he kept talking to me. There's nothing that poor man didn't say to me that day. I was just not ready to let go of this rock. I was saying in my heart, I'm going to carry this rock till I die. This is going with me to the grave. I'm never forgiving this man. So at a point, he saw that I was not going to come out, and he decided maybe he has to drag me out of the car. I finally made it out. And in my culture, she knows that when you lose a loved one, what you do is to say goodbye, you've got to fetch the soil and pour it over the grave 3 times. My brother will fetch the soil, he puts it in my hand, and it was raining that day. I'll never forget that day. And he says, pour it. I couldn't. I'll pour it in the ground. He fetches it again. Only God knows how many times that man did it. Every time I threw it away, he will fetch it. And he said to me, we're not leaving this place today until you forgive this man. And I said, why are you doing this to me? Do you know what this man did to me? And I started remembering all the pain and the hurt. And he said to me, I remember this vividly. He said, Father, this is the time for you to practice what you preach. So when I discovered that we're not going to leave here, I let down my guard. I said to myself, this rock is not going back with me. And I decided I was going to forgive. So I fetched the soil this time, and I poured it over the grave 3 times. And I tell you folks, I have never felt free in my life again like that minute. And I look back now, and I wondered why it took me that long before I did what I did. Because you know what? The first 2 years of my priesthood were very difficult years for me. I found it difficult celebrating the sacrament of matrimony. I hated weddings. You know why I hated weddings? Because there had to be a man who would stand there as a husband. I had no respect for men. I had no respect for husbands. I had no respect for fathers. And I struggled with God because he was called a father. But all that just dissolved just because I chose that I was going to let go of this rock. And I know even as you listen to me, You've been carrying this rock for so long, and you're probably wondering, if I'm not carrying this rock, what more will I carry? You carry freedom in place of it. You carry freedom. I'm a priest for 29 years now, and I can't tell you one day after that episode that I ever celebrate Mass or celebrated Mass, which is going to happen soon, when I did not pray for my father during Mass. And guess what I say to God every time when I say Mass? I say, Lord, if this man has not made it to heaven because of what he did to me, please, through the merits of this Mass, please can you grant him entry into heaven? I don't want God to keep him in hell, in purgatory. I want God to send him to heaven. How can you do this? The first step is a decision. You got to make a decision this morning. Last week, you made a decision to give Jesus a gift for Christmas, the gift of forgiving yourself. I'm pleading with you this morning, give Jesus another gift. You know what that gift is? The gift of forgiving one person in your life this Christmas. Not because they deserve it, but because that rock is not meant for you to carry. Don't bother about whether they deserve it. Don't bother about whether they are sorry. Just let them off. Let off the negative energy in you. That's all I'm talking about. Because there's no room for that. That's a distraction. That space is for God, and you are offering it to someone else. I want you to make a decision this morning that Jesus, because of you, and because you've forgiven me so many times, I choose to forgive this one person. And I'm going to ask the ushers, where are the ushers this morning? You can see sticky notes. So that's from last night. And the ushers will give you a sticky note if you're willing to do this with me. And just write the initials. So if it is Father Peter that has hurt you, FP. And I will invite you to bring it to the altar. And I know this is tough. I know how hard this is. But trust me, this is the best thing to do. So just one sticky note and the initials. From the way I've spoken this morning, you can tell that this message is not from me. This is God's message for you. So are you going to take it? And I just want you in your heart, as you pick that sticky note, to ask the Holy Spirit to reveal to you one or two names of people that He wants you to let go of, to set them free and make space in your heart for Him. After the decision today, the next step is that you write them a letter, expressing what they've done to you and how you feel. And you can write that letter, mail it to them, or you can write that letter and destroy it. It's your choice. Whichever way is still helpful because it gives you the opportunity to be able to pour out that feeling of hurt. Another way to do is to put a chair in front of you. Psychologists, counselors will always ask you to do that. Put a chair in front of you and imagine they're sitting there and just pour out all your anger, your pain towards that chair. And then look at the emotional release that comes with that. But let's start with a decision this morning. And the decision is, I'm deciding to let this person free. I'm not carrying that rock anymore. And there's a prayer that goes with that we're going to pray in the next few minutes. I know this is hard, but Jesus has not called you to a life of comfort, has He? He says, take up your cross and follow me. To be a Christian is meant to be hard. And why are you doing this? You're doing this because you remember the story of Jerry who went to Las Vegas. That's your story. You're doing this because your father is a father that receives back the prodigal son. And so if God has received you many times, He's saying, I want you to behave like me. Because I'm your father, you got to look like me and behave like me. I forgive you all the time. I want you to forgive someone else. And I want to end with this story. A priest was preaching doing his homily about the need for forgiveness. And then he was asking, is there anyone here who is struggling with unforgiveness? And as he kept asking, everyone bowed their head except this old lady. She was looking straight at the priest and just smiling as the priest was talking. And she was in her in her early 90s. And the priest was wondering, why is this woman smiling? Looks like she doesn't have any enemy. And then he called her, he said, oh, so-and-so person, do you have anyone in your life that you need to forgive? And she stood up and she said, no, Father. And the priest said, how come? She said, because I outlived all of them. I hope you don't mean to outlive all of these people, because you are not outliving your negative emotion. If you're done writing, then we'll say the prayer, and then I'll tell you what to do with your sticky note. Thank you for doing this. You can imagine how excited Jesus is just watching you do this morning, because he wants to set you free. He's so happy you're doing this morning. It's a wonderful gift you are giving him. When you're done writing, then we'll say a prayer together. I can tell how emotional this message is this morning. I have never had this number of bathroom stops at Mass on a Sunday. Yes, and this is normal, right? Thank you. Thank you. I know how hard it is. I know all the negative thoughts is just flooding in now, and you're recalling how they treated you. Yeah, and it's not okay that they treated you this way. But it's okay to decide to forgive, to set yourself free. It's for your own sake, and to please your Father in heaven. If that's what your Father in heaven wants from you, you're going to do it, because you are his disciple. Okay, shall we say the prayer on the overhead together? Heavenly Father, only you understand how much I've been hurt by this person. I don't want to carry the pain for another second. I don't want to be a bitter person, but I need your grace and the power of the cross to release my hurt and to forgive those who have hurt me. This is the turning point. First, I need to experience your forgiveness. You know all the ways I've hurt others, and I'm so sorry for my sins. Thank you, Jesus, for dying for me. I accept your grace and forgiveness, and I need it daily. Today, I'm turning to you, and I'm choosing to forgive the way you have forgiven me. Every time the memory comes back, I'll forgive that person again until the pain is gone. Heal my heart with your grace. In Jesus' name, amen. I invite you now to bring that gift to Jesus, to the altar. Please bring your sticky note and just place it, stick it on the altar. That's your birthday gift for Jesus. Thank you.